Welcome to the kitchen art class at Verona Senior Center. Today we're going to be painting not pictures of things that you find in the kitchen, not food and not the dinner table, not a Norman Rockwell picture of everybody eating Thanksgiving dinner, but we are going to be painting with things that you find in the kitchen. And so for our project today, go into your kitchen, grab your plastic wrap, the wax paper, kitchen sponge, the rattier the better. A magic eraser can be helpful, and cheesecloth, all things that you find in the kitchen. I've even stretched a little further, go into the bathroom and find your old empty bottle of hairspray, fill it up with water. Take a toothbrush, be sure you put it in the microwave, a little bit of water, and get it nice and clean, and we'll use that too. So you can paint with a lot of things other than paintbrushes, and the way we do this class, it gives people an opportunity to not have to spend a lot on supplies to get going. The water, I've even used an ice cube tray for the water. You can use an ice cube tray for a palette for your paint. So I like having an ice cube tray for the water because you've got 12 options for clean water rather than one little cup. These happen to be orange juice containers, so I like to do my art and spend the money on the paper and the paint. So you have good paper and good paint to work with. The other things, we can be pretty flexible. This is actually the second in our kitchen art class. And the first class we did a sampler where we tried using all these different things to see how they would look when we work them with paint. And this is a sampler, not a beautiful thing, nothing I'm going to frame, but it just gives us an idea of how you can work with wax paper. Here, this is a fairly light color, so a little bit hard to see, but wax paper makes a resist, and then we paint the blue, and you get your white clouds when you peel off that wax paper. The glass or plastic wrap, Saran or Glad or any of those all work. 2 or 3 colors on here, the muddier the better if you want to paint rocks or cliffs or a mountainside. You lay the plastic wrap on, scrunch it up a bit, and you're going to get little crevices and things that make interesting rock formations. This section is all salt, and the salt made little marks, little indents like tiny little pebbles. This section we used a kitchen straw. Blowing the straw gives you texture that maybe this could be part of a forest, something in the background. This spray is from the toothbrush, makes nice sand, pebbles on a rock or on a beach or something like that. And then the sponge is what we use to make the tree. We put it together and all did a little painting with our sky, the wax paper. The toothbrush was the little bits of blown cattails. The sponge down at the bottom was the grass, and then we just pulled up a little bit of length of green for grass. And so today what we're going to do is a painting using some of these different ideas. Here's our rocks made using the plastic wrap. Here's a little bit of that texture that comes from the toothbrush. Cheesecloth is behind our little grassy knoll here. And we've also put the sponge over the top of that, so we get a little extra texture. Sponge here, 2 or 3 different shades of green, blue, yellow, kind of mixed together, so you have some variety to make the tree. And our sky, and you can see a little better with a stronger color of paint and a bigger piece of paper, that the wax paper makes great clouds. So that's what we're going to go about doing today, and we'll get started. So for those of you who are watching, one of the first things you do with your watercolor paint, lay the paint out in a palette and actually let it dry. It really should dry overnight. If you use it wet, you're going to go through a lot of paint in a big hurry. We have those tubes of paint here. Just a little for instance, both of these tubes of paint each cost $10 a piece. So when you use it wet, it's very easy to use too much paint and have it all go down the drain in the end. If you put it out on a palette like you see here, then it'll dry and you can work with it just by re-wetting it. And that's one of the beauties of watercolor. Watercolor paint lasts forever, and you can use paint that's 20 or 30 or 40 years old and it will be just fine. Yeah, absolutely. But the first thing I do when I go to paint is I take a spray bottle and I wet all the paint. Now we've done that already for those of you who are here today. Come on in. And so that gets you started. Start with a mid-size paintbrush. This is a number 8 round. Use, if you've got more than one size here, use the smaller of the two when you're mixing your paint. And before you actually start using the paint, go into it and literally just go over the top. I say count to 20. You just go over and over and over the little dry pad of paint. The longer you do this, the stronger the color, the more pigment that you'll be using, and you'll be happier with your painting.
Any color?
Well, we're going to be doing the sky first.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to start by mixing up some blue. And here we go. When you're working with watercolor paint, if you think about the paint being the consistency of milk, that's helpful. Most of the time, people are working with paint that is too much water, not enough pigment. By going over and over and over it, you're going to get a little stronger color. It'll be a little thicker as you go. And the other thing when you're painting, do not get this metal part all the way, this is called the ferrule, and the ferrule should not be down into the paint. You're working with the front half or two-thirds of the brush. So you don't want to jam it down. So try and teach that to the little ones. That's a tricky one, but I think we can all figure that one out. So get your paint nice and thick. And the biggest problem that people have with watercolor is too much water on the paper or too much water in the paint. So a lot of times when you're doing your painting, you might take a very wet paint, and that's actually plenty thick right there.
Okay.
Yeah. And you might have a situation where you've got water on the paper and you've got lots of water in your paint, and when you put it on the paper, it's really, really faint. Wherever there's water, that paint is going to move. So that's helpful information. It's also sometimes very troubling because it goes all over the place. But it gives you the chance to control it a little bit too, if you know that. So what we're doing today is we're going to combine the different things we learned last time and use them to make a picture. And we're going to start with the sky. So we are going to take a clean brush, your bigger brush, and wet your paper, and you want to wet about the top 3/4 of it. Generally, when you're painting, it's good to think of your paper broken up in thirds, so the landscape might be the bottom third and the sky the top 2/3, or maybe the landscape's the bottom 2/3 and the sky is the top thirds. You want to avoid a straight line right across the middle. It's just not as easy on the eye. So
Paint away.
So you're doing the sky, so you're doing the top 2/3 and perhaps even 3/4 of this. And I'm going to paint along with you. So this is clean water. And going the skinny way. Yeah, great. And while we're doing this, Jennifer, if you want to tear out some wax paper or cloud shapes.
Sure.
Okay. So
That's how you got those.
that's right. Yeah, that's right. The wax paper formed kind of a resist and let us keep things.
How wet are you going with your water? I never did this before, I know.
Yeah, you will start out wet and it will begin to dry into the paper. We don't need to soak it terribly, but you don't want to leave any dry spots. So pick it up and look at it, and you might see a glare, and that'll tell you where it's wet and where it's not. Okay? And while it is drying, I'm hoping you've all mixed up, your blue paint, because this will need to go on while the paper's wet. We lay the wax paper down, and because it's wet underneath, it sticks. And that's your first cloud. And if you want to give me a skinny cloud, oh, sorry, getting grabby here. Try to get irregular shapes, just like you find clouds. You don't want straight lines. So don't hesitate to edit a little bit by just peeling it somewhat. So here's my other cloud. And that's not quite as dry. I'm going to go back. Or that is a little too dry, I meant to say. I'm going to go back and wet this area and lay my second cloud. 2 or 3 cloud shapes. Just get them laying down. Look at your paper. And you don't want to see any dry spots on your paper before you start to put the color on. You want to see a little glossiness that tells you that it's wet. And it's often easier to pick it up and look at it to see if you've got dry spots. And indeed, I do. So. Okay, take if there's any extra water. And I am now going to ask you to take a quick look. I'm going to go get my brush wet, big brush, dip in that paint and get some good color going. And you'll see when we go right over the wax paper that you're not getting paint under there, or not any but a little bit of the edges. And that's going to become your cloud. And you need to be fairly quick about it because the paper is drying all the time.
Tear it apart?
Tear it into cloud shapes.
Are you using the regular old blue?
I'm
Or
using
lighter?
a
No.
French ultramarine blue, but you can use the other blue, and you've got French ultramarine right there. That paint is actually too thick.
So,
You're going to need a little more water mixed in there.
okay.
Probably the most important thing is just getting a sense of, how thick that paint should be. So, for those of you looking, this is what it looks like. And that's all wax paper there and there. The little dots are just beaded up over it. The paint might creep in a little bit under the outside edges of the wax paper, but that'll be fine. And that's all we're looking at.
I missed it. Which blue?
The darker blue,
Okay.
yeah, there is a blue on your palette that's a bright green, greenish blue. And unless you go pretty light, that is not going to work too well for you. Okay, and you need more water. So just grab it up and grab some paint and get that on there before it dries too much. And your paint is a little thick. And so I would say use your bigger brush and get some more water in there and go fairly quickly. What happens, if the paper starts to dry, you're going to start to get a harsh edge. And that's why we work quickly. I think the best way to think about painting watercolor is paint something quickly, go get a cup of coffee. Paint something quickly, make a phone call. Paint something quickly, put a load of laundry in the washer. Paint something quickly, go make the bed. I really believe that because it forces you to move quickly and then not to play with it. And when you play with it too much, you do end up with some harsh lines and some other things, but things that we can usually correct. Okay, for your purpose here, another fatter brush. How fat is that brush? Yeah,
Pretty fat.
Pretty fat. Okay, then maybe a little more water.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yep. And actually, there,
Oh,
like
that
that.
much more
Yeah,
water?
go ahead, just
Okay.
switch
Okay.
and feel the difference.
Wow.
And go ahead. Because you've got to get through this whole page before it starts to dry or you're going to get lines. Are you doing okay? Okay, that looks good. Now, after you've done this a little while, you can do other things too. You could have 2 shades of blue ready. You could have blue with a little purplish cast to it. You could have blue and put in a little bit of red sienna and get a grayish cast. and get two colors going in the sky. But right now we're just learning, so we're going to get down our basics and then we can kind of go from there. So you're fine. You're in good shape there. And you're doing fine.
And
You're fine there. What's that?
I'm almost out of blue.
Okay, that's fine. Here. Just carry that down. Here, switch. There you go. And I'll get this one right before you.
got a little bit dark.
It's pretty dull.
It'll be fine. Okay, and keep going. Carry it down. Here, we'll switch again, give you a wetter brush. There you go.
It's okay, it's just a stormy day.
We're all different, yes.
Okay.
It'll be a stormy day.
Well, and that's something you can do when you're painting, is decide, oh, you know, this was more towards night, hers was a little more towards the morning. Okay, here's another one. I'm putting more water. You're good. I carry it down a little bit. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
Just carry it down. And let's go, and let's just rinse this out and dry it off a little bit. And now carry some of that down and grab that little dot there while you're at it. And just bring that down about an inch or so to the bottom of where that dot hit.
Okay.
Okay, so that's our sky. And the next step is the rocks. And so here I've got burnt sienna, and there's actually blue and green in this. And when you're making the rocks, you want to get at least 2 or 3 colors, because you want that muddy, mossy, grassy kind of look that rocks get. So I would suggest to start by mixing 2 or 3 little puddles. Burnt sienna is the rusty color, burnt umber, the dark brown. That same blue that you've got in the middle, if you drop a little dab of the burnt sienna in there, you'll get a beautiful gray. Okay.
And then we're going to use saran wrap.
We are going to use saran wrap. And so Jennifer is going to go around and give everybody a bit of saran wrap. You want more than the space you're covering, because we're going to scrunch it up.
Scrunch it up.
That's right.
And what other color did you say? The blue and the...
The blue and the burnt sienna, which is the rust color.
Okay, the brown.
Yeah. The basic, no, that's fine.
Okay.
You'll use that, but you're also going to use the other colors.
Okay.
And don't worry too much about getting things dirty. This is watercolor. The mix is actually often prettier. If you stick with only a handful of colors, maybe 6 or 8 colors, colors like burnt sienna, burnt umber, French ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, kind of standard colors. Reds like alizarin crimson is a good red. There's a lot of different yellows or golds, but like a raw ochre or yellow ochre or something like that. The fewer colors you have, the easier painting will be. You'll get to know how the colors mix and what looks good when you put it together. If you have a palette, you know, when I was a little kid, I always saw those big, 64 colors of crayons or 64 little paint pads or whatever. And I always thought that was the best thing, and really what I've learned since, you're much better off with fewer colors. You'll have better results, you'll be happier, you'll be more confident if you work with fewer colors. So, I'm gonna go ahead and get ready. I've got my big brush here. Getting some of that burnt sienna going.
Get the rest of the paper wet first.
Yes, you will get the rest of the paper wet. And I'm going to get this brown mixed up. And going over that little paint pad until the color gets strong. I'm also going to use the blue, but I've got blue ready, so I'm in pretty good shape. You can, if you want to, use a spray bottle to get this area wet, and that's fine. Why don't you try that?
Keep forgetting about that.
Okay, and you're going to need to get a couple more colors on there, and fairly quickly, because your paint will start to dry. Yeah, first thing you do with this is usually put water under and then the paint on top. But if you've got paint on top, then what you need to do is just get that paper down quickly. So here's my little wet. This is not rocket science, just fill with color. Now, just get different colors in here, stronger colors. Don't worry if you put purple in there, if you put yellow in there. Yeah, borrow. I've got blue right now. What happens when you put the blue in with the rust and the brown? You get grays. It's beautiful. Okay. So, see how sloppy this is right now. Sloppy? Sloppy, right? Okay. Your plastic wrap goes down and move it around, and you'll see ridges and crevices forming and creases, and those are your rocks. So that's that. And Andy, maybe you can get a closer look at that.
Uh-oh.
That's how it's supposed to look.
Uh-oh.
All right. So how are you doing here? Okay, good. That's great. You are going to need a little stronger color there.
2 or 3 colors.
Oh,
I just realized
yeah,
I kind of went
that's,
into...
you did. One minor little thing, and you know how it is. You have to actually experience it before you remember it, and that is we're keeping a little margin between the blue and the browns. And darn, I should have mentioned that earlier.
That's all right.
So,
Most of it's
and you
coming out.
find,
I don't
yep,
think it's
scrunch
going
it
to
up,
be a problem.
and cover your browns.
You just have to work it in.
Okay. You will, because actually what we're going to do is we're going to put green in the middle there. So before you worry about that section, get some more darks down here and get your plastic wrap on.
Yeah, so you can get your rocks.
Yep. Now, you can even do something like this. Are you ready?
What? Oh, sure.
All right.
Sure, never get anything. Surprise!
Now go ahead and put your plastic wrap down with that piece there.
Am I done
You're
now?
fine. Yep, you can put more in if you want. If I put anything in, I'd put blue. But let me show you. Okay, that's a
Okay.
lot of blue. There. So,
Okay.
a little stronger.
Oh, I think I got your piece.
Okay.
Somebody's piece.
Bert, you've got dry paper there, so you're going to need to work fairly quickly on that. We're not actually painting the rocks, we're just getting...
Are we supposed to
chunky.
wet that bottom part?
Yes.
Yeah. see,
Yes.
we
Did I say that?
I did.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I did.
Okay.
But I didn't start before they did, so.
Okay. There you go.
I used to be a teacher, so I
Yeah.
listened to directions.
I listen sometimes, and sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
So.
Sometimes it doesn't sink in for me.
Well, my sister and I paint
Yeah, we're
together,
gonna have to have
and
a
she's
up there
very
for grass.
precise and follows directions, and she's very, very neat. And I tend to do something and go, and so as we're painting along, she's doing this, and I'm going, and it gets pretty funny actually. And we stop each other, you know.
Yeah.
Like, no, I said, Jean, you've got to let that barn be a little more dilapidated. You do not need a T-square to make a falling down barn, you know. And she'll just say, Mary, put some water on that yellow. It's too bright. So we make a pretty good pair together.
It's nice that you work together.
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
work
it is.
together.
Okay, so the next part of this that we're going to do is we're going to get some of the greens in there. I'm hoping your midsection is somewhat dry or working on dry. This is the time when you would stop and have a coffee and let things dry a little bit. And yeah. So we're not having coffee.
Must
so.
leave you a tip.
I did see cookies out there, though.
Yeah.
If they have any left, we can invade.
That would be an idea. When you're actually painting, though, before you start painting, it's always good to wash your hands with soap and water.
Oh, I just took
Always
showers
good to
before I
wash your surface with soap and water. because water and oil do not mix. And if you happen to have some leftover cookie grease on your fingers, it
That
will
would be
show
bad.
up. It'll show up in your
I
painting.
remember you
It's
saying
like,
that last
like
time.
beating egg whites.
Yeah.
You don't
And
put
it-
it on any fish.
If it's on the table, the first thing I did when I came in here to set up, I washed this table twice with soap and water.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
And look at the mess I've made.
Well, we can wash it again at the end. But I really was looking for grease. I wasn't really worried about that.
And I didn't leave green area in between.
Well, that's all right.
I
We'll
can
just,
maybe
we
go
will
out
just
the
imagine it. Yeah.
Maybe
Are
I
we
can
supposed to
grab
leave
a
that
little.
wax paper on there yet?
We
I
do
didn't
leave
think
it
I
on until it gets drier.
Okay.
In the real world, I would probably leave the plastic on and the wax paper on and have it be there for 4 or 5 hours.
Oh.
I would probably do this part, leave it overnight, wake up in the morning and work on it again. But in this particular setting, you know, we don't have that luxury if we're going to actually
Right.
finish. And it
Will it
doesn't,
actually come off though? if
it'll
it's
come
done?
off. Oh, sure, it'll come off.
Okay.
And even if you pull this off now, you will get a lot of these little crevices showing.
Mhm.
This one I did this morning, and what, do you think maybe we left this on a half an hour? I think.
I like that.
We left the
Yeah.
wax paper and the plastic wrap was only down for about a half an hour. You just want to get to the point where that paint is not moving. In other words, the paper is dry or nearly dry. One dilemma of going back into your painting when the paint is still dampish is that the colors are going to move when you don't want them to. So since we're doing a little bit of land and a little bit of a tree, we don't want that going all over the place. And so it's good to let it dry. So that's what we're doing, killing a few minutes. So while we're doing that, I would suggest mixing up a couple of greens, 2 or 3, like a yellow green, medium green, and a blue green. So many of these palettes have a bright green color in them. And if they do, yeah, grab that one. That particular green on its own is a little too bright, probably, unless it's just the very beginning of spring. Mixing the paint, try and remember to use your smaller paintbrush. Otherwise, you're going to just get way more water, and you'll mix the paint, but it'll end up on the brush. So, yep.
So smaller one? or
Yep,
this?
that's fine. Yep.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you've got a lot of blue in that paint. So
I know, I'm
here,
gonna rinse it out.
well, don't. This is fine,
Okay.
because what happens when you put blue and yellow together?
Green,
Uh-huh. So you're already halfway to your
Okay.
green color.
all right.
So there you go.
And again, I'm asking, can I just dip this in the yellow, or should I rinse it out?
There are
first?
teachers who would cringe to hear me say, yeah, go ahead. But I say, yeah, go ahead. We want green.
Okay.
So just go ahead and pick up some of that yellow, and you're going to get yourself a green.
Right,
We'll clean it off at the end of the day.
okay.
And you want 2 or 3 shades of green, and if you mix it and muddy it up, that's exactly what you're going to have. So you need a little more yellow there, and I'd mix up a puddle to one side that's more bluish, and in the middle more green, and on the end more yellow. So, seeing as how I have mentioned that, I should probably do the very same thing myself. So.
So you want a little brown, little
Yep.
green.
Yes, and that burnt sienna, you know, maybe you don't think rust is a beautiful color, but it's a terrific mixing color.
Okay.
So this, I happen to have rust in my green, and look at this pretty green.
Mhm.
So put
So-
a little of that.
A little bit of the rust.
So
Yeah.
do we wet that surface first?
No, not yet, and you really don't need to in this case.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah, good question. Okay.
I need more green.
Okay, get a little more green here, and I'm gonna just get greenish blue over in this little well. So I've got 3 shades of green. I've got a yellow green, a blue green, and yellow green, blue green, and kind of a middle green.
I don't have any yellow. Should I add yellow?
This is yellow right there.
Oh, is that okay?
Yeah, that's a raw ochre.
What should I do to make this more green?
Blue.
Just blue?
Yep. That's that's more than enough blue. It's going to become your, yeah.
Too much.
Yeah, you can see how easily you can go through paint trying to figure out mixing. If you really want to learn to paint, sit down for an hour with a palette of paint and just mix the colors. Do nothing else. Don't try and paint anything, just add a little more green, add a little more yellow, add a little more blue, add a little red, and see what happens. That's a perfect green. That's a really nice green. This little puddle that's in your green spot there, that's fine. And what you could do is take this extra bit of yellow here and just soak it up, move it to an empty spot, and pick up some of that. Pick up some of that later. Well, that's kind of a murky, fallish green.
Yeah.
So you've got 3 shades really right there. And that'll do it. Okay, if you need fresh water, Jennifer will get you fresh water.
She just did. I think she was just waiting till we were done
Yeah.
with this mucky
Okay.
mess.
You can see how handy it would be to have this little ice cube tray. And now I haven't had to get new water, and I still have a number of
You're
spots.
good.
Yeah. So, and
That
the
make a
same
mess.
business, you know, that's an easy place to pick up something like that. Okay, so we have 2 green areas. This midsection here and the tree. And let's start with the midsection. If your area is fairly dry, yeah.
I think it is.
Yep, I think you're okay. Okay, if you have blue, don't worry about it. If you have brown, don't worry about it. And just get some green right in the middle.
Okay.
And what we're going to do is take our cheesecloth. You've all got a little bit of cheesecloth. And when you use this in a painting, don't just use it the way it comes. Take it and pull it and make it messy. And get holes in it and reinvent. Yeah. It's sort of torn and sort of, you know, just not straight. Take care not to end up with a straight edge in your painting. It just becomes too obvious. Cheesecloth can be used not just for the grass, which is what we're going to be using it for, but it can also be used if you want to do trees. It makes a great bunch of trees, and you can actually follow some of these little lines and paint in some twigs, and that's really fun. So that'd be another thing we could do. So I've got this all kind of torn and looking bad, and that's the way we want it. We're going to go into this middle section here, and we're going to paint green. You can actually tuck in a little green up against your rocks. If you have, like I do, I have kind of bumpy rocks, so you can tuck in there. Otherwise, just imagine yourself a green that kind of goes over the top edge of your rocks and the bottom edge of your sky.
Fatter
And-
brush again or not?
Fatter brush is good. Oh, my cloud fell off. Oh, but it does give you a chance to see. There's cloud.
Oh, yeah.
So,
different colors of green.
different colors of green.
And do
Yep.
we want a wet brush when we do
No,
it?
not here, because your paper is still pretty wet. And you will be laying that cheesecloth down. And again, get your 2 or 3 colors in there. We're not talking about necessarily a huge amount of space. We're talking about an inch or 2 maybe. So I've got this little stripe of green, you can see, okay. And I've got my cheesecloth, and that is going in here. And on top of that cheesecloth, I'm going to put more green paint. And that just gives a little bit of texture to the grassy area.
And then you put more green paint over that, you said.
Yep. Okay. So you can see how that looks with a little more green right over the top of the cheesecloth. You could use a stronger green.
Sure
so I can help you make that. Okay.
How do you
So-
keep, just hold the cheesecloth down a little bit?
Yeah, the water will help you. The wet paint that you're laying it on should help it. Okay, you go ahead and borrow my greens here.
Okay. Put this on though, right?
Yeah, that's fine. And go ahead.
Just kind of scrunch it,
Yep,
lay it down.
yep. Try not to have it like you can see the weave of the fabric, so it's something of an angle. There. You see what I mean? How that's a
Mhm.
little twisted. So go ahead and use the darker greens and put that on.
Okay.
Okay. And you are going to need, if you don't mind, I'm going to get a little green. Go over that about 20 times. Get yourself a stronger green. I'm picking that up now and moving it to the center. And now it's a crust.
They're washable.
Okay. And that's still kind of out.
Oh, you want rust and green?
Well, I did, and the rust doesn't show up. It turns this bright green into a more natural green.
Can I do that over? the
Yes, just blob it on
Here and there.
here and there. When you're blobbing things on, blob is really a good word. You're not covering the whole area. It's here and it's there. A blob can be big, it can be small, it can be kind of stripy, it can be kind of fat and short. So you could use some blobby.
More, right?
Yep, and in this case, I think a little rust is going to be the answer.
Mm-hmm. And the green, I see that.
Yep, and okay, now that was a lot of rust. But see how quickly it goes green on us.
Uh-huh.
There, see?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, try that. And your colors are fine. They might be stronger. I'm afraid they might be a little too much water. And so if you wanted to go back and just go over your pad of paint and make them a little bit stronger, you'll be okay. Bert loves strong color and it shows, and you never hear me telling him to make things stronger. He's got his own style, and that's another thing when you're painting. We all have our own styles, and some people are light painters, some people are very precise, some people like realism, some people like texture. I like texture. Some people naturally come at it with really, really strong colors. Don't fight that. That's you. And that's the artist in you coming through, and that's a good thing. So when you have a class, you shouldn't be saying, I want this painting to look just like this. Should never look just like this. We should, if we had a room of 100 people, they all had the same paint and the same instruction, they should all turn out different. That's the person that's coming through. So that's good. How are you doing there? So your rusty area, you need a little wet in there to make it move. See? See? Yeah. See? Yeah. So. Okay. So we now have our rocks. We have our sky. We have the grassy area. We now need a tree. And at the end, we can do our little bit of stones and pebbles with our toothbrush. So we're doing a tree. Once again, 3 shades of green. So go ahead and mix yourself up some. I have managed to use my paintbrush along the way. All right. Yeah, that's fine.
I think I'm going to have to go with another one, aren't I? How am I going to get 3 shades of green in there?
Easily.
Brush right here. You think?
Okay, I do.
I don't know,
Here's
she
your
might
middle
have found
green.
it.
Okay.
That one over there.
And
Green.
there's your blue green. Ooh, that's really still too blue. I'm going to mix that in a little more. Okay. Get your yellow over here. And it doesn't have to be mixed in the center a little bit. You can go right to that little spot. Okay, see you've got a green there coming. yellowish green. And let's get that brighter green going.
And the brownish, you said?
And the brownish green. So we'll pick a little bit of this. Let's actually just bring some of this green over here.
Okay.
Oh, now wait a minute. Look at that. We just did it without realizing we were doing it. But that got a little rust on us, so a little more green. There you go. We got 3 shades. That'll work. And if they come out a little more rust and a little more yellow, then it's the fall.
There you go.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Okay. So, oh, look at that. That's where the paintbrush went, right under the painting. Okay. So you can put in here, if you want to have just one tree, that's fine. If you want to have more than one tree, that's fine too. We, at this point, are going to be using our sponges. And everybody's got a sponge. And just so the folks on the cable can see what we're doing, just take a cheap little sponge and cut it in half and just pick out bits and pieces in the middle here. And when you do that, you're going to create little craters. And that makes it look more natural. At least, it probably doesn't make the sponge look more natural, but it will make a more natural looking tree. So, gotta be careful how you say things. So, and I don't know if you can see that on TV, but that's what we're after. And in comparison to what you got here. So, in this case, we're not going to have any extra water on the page. We've already got a dampish paper anyhow, and so we don't want to add any more water. We're going to take our little sponge and go right into your mixed up paint and take that paint and sponge it on. And I don't have my paint mixed up, so I'll have to do that first. Yeah. So your 3 colors.
Do you want us to put the tree in first or later?
Tree in first. We're not putting in the trunk yet.
3 different shades if you want.
I've got a yellow here.
So we're using the sponge for the tree.
Yep. The sponge is your tree. When you think about it, when you look at a tree when you're outside, you do not see individual leaves. You see clusters. And so we are painting clusters today. And if I keep going like this, I'm also going to have a fall tree. There we go. I often do not buy green paint. I really prefer things mixed. Okay, so here's my sponge. Here's my middle green. I have not added water to the paper and I have not added water to the sponge. And when you put this down, turn it around. Don't make a ball. Just make a conglomeration there of paint. Got a little yellow here. And we'll put a little yellow in. And it's a hopping kind of a thing. If you push down too hard, it'll be smoothed out. And that we don't want. Okay, there's that color. And now I need brighter, bluer. Oh, that's really blue. Okay, fix that. Okay. And a little more of the dark. And so you've got kind of that feathery look like a locust tree maybe. And though I said not a ball, I've got sort of a ball shape going and I'm just going to let it be. So there's what we're looking for. You see a little yellow, a little green, a little blue. Your sponge is just bopping along here. Okay, don't push down too hard. That'll mush it together a little too much. That's fine. Maybe adding that bluish green would be good. And you need more of a greenish color.
I got a cloud in the middle of my tree.
Oh, well, you know what? If your cloud is in the middle of your tree, pick up your cloud.
Take it off.
And yeah, put your tree right over that cloud.
Is that okay? That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, at this point you can pick up your yeah, and you did, so you're fine. Okay, so maybe another color in there that breaks it up a little bit.
That's what I'm trying to
Yep.
figure out which one.
What color? Yeah. Try a yellowish and not too wet.
That's what this is yellow
It's
here.
pretty, yeah, that's fine. But
I
this
was
is
wondering about red or something.
red and green make brown, and generally not a very pretty brown. If you want a brown, mix burnt sienna and one of the blues, and you could do that. And then your tree is definitely a fall tree. Okay, so I've just got one tree here, and it's missing the trunk. You might have noticed that. At this point, I'm going to take off the rest of the pieces, make it a little easier to work, and you can see where we're at.
Should a meat take or so?
I think you can, yeah. All right, you seeing a little texture in there? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this too.
You could do that or you could leave that. In your case, I might leave it. It looks a little wet yet.
Okay.
And you can certainly work with that. Okay, so we're at the point of painting the trunk of the tree. And if this is your tree, your trunk does not look like this. It doesn't go up right through the middle of the tree, visible all the way. It's down below, and sometimes you see a little branch poking off the side. So that's what we're going to try and paint. We're going to get the trunk down here, and we're just going to have a little branch or two that sticks out. I like to paint my trunks and my branches upside down. I bet you're not surprised to hear that. Let's see here. And if you remember, how do I like to get brown?
Yellow and, no, red and something.
Burnt sienna and the blue.
Oh,
And, or, I see I have burnt umber here, burnt sienna. Burnt sienna and blue make a really nice gray-brown. It's very livable. In my trees, I have, often I will
I don't like it.
put my hand right in the middle of it because that gives it texture. So here's this part. Can you all see? Okay, so I'm gonna put the base of the trunk there and come up. Okay.
You come over this way.
Okay.
Okay.
So here we go. Okay.
Upside down.
And we're going to take a look at this. You don't want a straight, flat stripe. If you wanted a flat tree, you'd take a flat brush and you'd paint, and that's what you would get. But that's not what trees look like. So I'm going to come back in here. I'm not trying to make it perfect. I don't want to end up with really straight edges. So you can see what we've got there. It's a little bumpy along the sides. That's much more like what you see in a real tree. And then I might add a branch out here. If you're adding a branch, it starts in on the trunk so it feels attached. And, ooh, look at that. I just accidentally hit the edge of the paper, but I think that's a branch. So I'm going to just make that a little more connected there. And I'm going to make kind of a V thing, V for Verona, right? And we'll have a branch that's coming through here. And there's a little window there, and a little there, and there's that V for Verona. And let's see here, we'll get another little branch out here, and another branch maybe right there. And you can add more if you like. Since I ended up with the wayward branch, I'm going to add some more tree. And I can do that. So, there we go. And then that branch looks kind of like it was there. If you actually look at trees out in the woods or the highways, anywhere you go, there are some really strangely shaped trees that I think sometimes if you painted them, you would never really believe that that was how they were supposed to be. So I've got this tree trunk painted. Go back and get yourself some extra dark, and I'm just dropping in a little more dark paint. Take your fist, put it right in the middle.
Huh?
Yep.
What?
Make a fist and then just.
Yeah, and just lay it right in the paint.
Whoops, I
Okay.
did mine too much.
Okay,
Oh, wow.
easy to do. But what that does, it breaks up your strokes a little bit. So,
You put your fist right in the middle of that?
I put it right in the middle of the tree trunk.
Oh.
Yep.
That's what I wondered.
So, because we tend to paint a kind of equal amount of paint up and down, and so when you put your fist in the middle of it, you're taking away some of that paint. And actually, okay, that's fine. Got it. Do it a second time a little higher up. And, yeah. You've got an angle to your hand when you're doing that. Here, clean off your hand there. All right, and then do it right up here and kind of
here?
line it up. Yep. There you go.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yep. All right. If you feel like your branches are too much, they're too strong or too dark, take a paper towel and just dab into them while it's still wet.
That doesn't
So,
look-
yep, you could do that.
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
that looks awful.
And this, I would actually break that a little more. And then come back in and actually put some green over there. And you'll be fine. You have a fairly strong trunk here. You could show a little trunk up higher if you wanted to. He broke! There
It's
you go.
broken.
So take that sponge and add a little bit of green.
Up in here, okay.
Yep, right, go right over parts of those branches.
Okay.
Well, it's
So,
a process. I
Yeah.
love trees.
you're fine.
Green?
You could dry
I'll figure
this
something out here.
and then go back and put some more green on. But if you put more green on now, it's gonna just all blend in. It's gonna be a smooth wall. So let it dry and then come back with a darkish bluish green and like a little here, a little bit there, a little towards the bottom there, and that's gonna give you that more definition that kind of got lost in the water. So how's everybody doing? Okay? You can take off your clouds and see what you got. That's very nice.
One came off all on it.
Yep, that's all right. You can, if you wish, take your Mr. Clean eraser and get it wet. And I don't want to do this on yours, so I'm going to do it on this one. It's dry. And so Mr. Clean eraser, magic eraser, and you can actually scrub away some of that harsher edge.
Oh, okay.
All right. And that just kind of works it into the background a little bit.
So you wet that a little bit, huh?
You could, yeah, well, and then make sure you don't have dirty fingers that have brown paint on them and put them in your cloud. So, okay. Yeah.
So how wet did you do it?
Okay, so dip it in there and go to the edge. And which area don't you like? Let's put it that way. You don't like this? Really? I thought that was really pretty, like a little fluffy edge of the cloud.
Okay.
You don't like
Well, what were
that?
you gonna clean up?
I was gonna soften this edge here.
Okay.
It's a little more of a straight line.
Oh, gotcha.
And I actually bring some of the blue back in here.
You see so much that I don't see yet. Really?
You will.
Yeah, but I see that as very straight.
This is very straight. And so we're just gonna
Yeah, I don't.
soften that up.
Now that I'm doing it
And
right.
then notice that some of the blue is coming in here.
Oh, it's supposed to be
Yeah,
wet?
and the sponge is crumbling a
Yeah, I
little.
know.
It'll be fine. That'll all brush off later on. And then carry it out to the edge here.
But I didn't really move out of our house, I used this in the closet.
Yeah.
You know, where things get,
That's
make a little
right.
mark on the wall.
Yeah.
From the hanger.
Okay,
I
yeah.
think I'll just leave it the way it is.
So
Not working.
you go at it slowly because if you do too much, you
I
can
don't like this.
start to have the paper disintegrate a little bit. But
Yeah, I
yeah, so
know.
then I'm coming down here. And at this point, when you see that, we need to stop.
Yep.
Yep. You could go back in with a sponge, with your blue paint, put a dab of that burnt sienna in there so it's a blue-gray, and make it so it's not a real strong color. So you'd actually test it out on your paper here. And then dab a little color into your cloud. And that would be fine.
Blue phrases.
Yep. This is fine. Yeah. Are you happy? That's the question.
I am.
Okay, good. So, couple of things that we have not done yet and can do. Go back to the one I was working on today.
I forget what makes gray blue one.
Burnt sienna
Burnt
and
sienna.
blue. Either of the blues mixed with that will be fine. Okay, so let's see here. Toothbrush. Not wet. Pick up some of your paint. I'm picking up a brownish color, and it's going at the bottom here, so it has a bit of a pebbly look. Okay? And I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but that's what we're doing here. Is putting in some kind of broken up, pebbly, sandy spots. This is just one color. This is better to use more than one color. So I'm picking up a little of a goldish color also. And I'll put that in there. And that just adds texture. It's just a small touch, but it's a nice thing to do. You can, at this point, start to look at this and is there anything else you want to do? You could take your sponge and sponge over your grassy area if you wanted to. And you could actually do that. Just get a little more greenish color in there. You could also take a green, and as you know, I always like to knock it down with some other color, so it's just not too bright. And come in by your tree, and just a few little bits of grass coming up around that tree. So, and carry that out a little bit. And in this case, I think I'm going to get another color. And even another color. To get a fine line like grass, you're working on the very tip of the brush, and be gentle, like you're stroking a kitty, you know, just very gentle. And that'll get you a lighter, easier line. So that's it. And maybe I'm going to put a few strokes of grass in this little spot here, and maybe over here too. Okay. So just pick a little spot and a few little light, gentle strokes like that. Pick more than one color. Make it interesting. And that's about it.